Oh, it's the left. The left are the violent ones. Let's talk about Charlie Kirk. So on September 10th, Charlie Kirk was shot and killed doing a speaking event at a Utah university. I want to say first and foremost that I think it was terrible that he was shot in front of his wife and kids. I know that's got to be traumatizing, and that's as awful that that happened. Period. I do not condone violence to anyone. I'll say it again a couple of times just to make it perfectly clear. I do not condone political violence against other people. I do not condone political violence. That being said, there has been a concerted effort since then to essentially whitewash Kirk's words, the things that he said, the things that he stood for. And I've seen Democrats doing this. I've seen media like CNN essentially bringing on Jack Posobiec so that he could go on and essentially try and launder Kirk's reputation. And while I might not agree with political violence, and I think it was a terrible thing of what happened to him, at the same time, I think we need to be circumspect about this. And let's not pretend that Kirk was not a hateful, bigoted person. All right. Some of the things they'll say, oh, well, he didn't say stone gay people, even though he was staunchly anti LGBT and pushed anti LGBT rhetoric constantly. So let's just walk through some of the things that he did and said so that we get to know who Charlie Kirk was as a person. And just for those of you that might say, oh, but Zoe, if you are starting from a point of bias where you're saying that he was a hateful, bigoted person, surely you cannot take a stance on this to look at evidence unbiased. Okay, well, this is an article here from Snopes. That's not me. This is Snopes. And it's 6 claims that they have fact checked about Charlie Kirk and the things that he has said previously. So, Charlie Kirk once said that empathy was a made up New Age term. So, a lot of people right now are saying we should have empathy for what happened, and we should have enough empathy to say that it was terrible and it's sad and it's an awful thing. And I am an empathetic person. I saw the same video that everyone else did, and I was disgusted by it. I was sickened. I felt terrible that this had happened to another human being in front of his family and in front of all these students at a college town. But let's not pretend for 1 second that Kirk himself did not at one point in time say that empathy was made up. He says, I can't stand the word empathy. Actually, I think empathy is a made up New Age term that it does a lot of damage, especially in the context of Western culture, is what he was referring to. And Snopes says this is a correct attribution. There, we get called like leftists are soft and we're weak, and yet we're the ones calling out Israel and the genocide in Gaza, for instance. And I don't see people on the right calling this out. I've been sickened and disgusted for years now at the videos coming out of children getting blown up in schools, of children being starved to death, of being shot by the IDF. And yet, I don't hear people on the right condemning Israel. They will run endless apologetics for this. Where's the empathy for those people being bombed and killed and genocided over there? How about were Charlie Kirk's last words, quote, counting or not counting gang violence? And it's a correct attribution. So he was asked about essentially trying to spin mass shooters as being trans. And he was asked a question about how many transgender shooters have there been of all the like last decade or whatever mass shooters. And he ended up saying, oh, well, too many, because he didn't want to just say 4, the actual number. And then instead, he went on to, when he was asked about the total and how about total gun violence, he's saying, counting or not counting gang violence. This is an, anti black dog whistle that he's doing here. We'll cover more of that later. It's just ironic that trying to whitewash his reputation, that, oh, well, he actually was a decent person, that literally his last words was trying to weaponize gang violence against a minority community. It's just, it's sad, but it's ironic. So Kirk once said that some gun deaths are worth it in order to have the Second Amendment. And this one is a correct attribution. So at Turning Point, USA CEO co-founder Charlie Kirk said of gun deaths on April 5th, 2023, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost, unfortunately, of some gun deaths every year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. Now, I will say on this one, there is a little bit of nuance here, because as sad as it is, he was essentially trying to... it doesn't matter. He shouldn't have said it. I'm not going to run any apologetics for him whatsoever. He said what he said. I'm not going to turn around and do any of this, oh, well, let's just soften it by saying there was some other context. No, that's what he said, all right? So he once said Jewish money was ruining U.S. culture. The culture. That's also true. It was in fall of 2023, after Hamas attacked Israel. Kirk said on different episodes of his podcast, the Charlie Kirk Show, that Jewish dollars were funding Marxist ideas in education and policy and contributing to opening borders. Cultural Marxism has long been an anti-Semitic trope. So that's him just spreading anti-Semitism. He's also taking shots. This is like, being anti-intellect and going after people in education. Charlie Kirk once called for an amazing patriot to bail out Paul Pelosi's attacker in 2022, even though he had also said that the attack was awful. Now, this was a man, DePape, I believe was his name, that broke into Pelosi's home in Sacramento looking for Nancy and ended up finding her husband, 2 years old, Paul. And DePape hits him in the head with a hammer and caused him serious injuries. He had to be rushed to the hospital and everything else. And Kirk at the time thought that it would be good to just make jokes about this. So I understand condemning political violence. I thought it was awful what DePape did. I felt like our country is heading toward a very dark place where we start normalizing or joking about this type of violence. And yet Kirk was making light of it. Charlie Kirk once said that passing the Civil Rights Act was a huge mistake. This one is a correct attribution. He once said, we made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. And this is his comments in a 2024 article for Wired. According to Torton's report, Kirk made the statement while speaking at America Fest, a political convention organized by Turning Point USA, in December 2023. Turton provided an audio recording to Snopes, which verified that Kirk said the quote about the Civil Rights Act. So this is just a small sample of the garbage that this man spewed and the hate and vitriol. So I'll say as many times as I need to, while I don't support political violence, let's not pretend that Charlie Kirk was not a Christian nationalist, a fascist, spreading endless hatred and bigotry. This is a Reuters article talking about how his rhetoric inspired supporters or enraged foes. Now, I want to talk specifically on this one, that he was taking a question about trans people whenever he was saying about mass shootings and, oh, there's too many of them, all right? So data shows trans people conduct a very small percentage of mass shootings, according to the website PolitiFact. But the reply was vintage stuff for the conservative activist and provocateur who became a MAGA celebrity over the past decade and is credited with inspiring a generation of college students to become politically active and turn out for Donald Trump's presidency. In debates across the country, on college campuses, podcasts, and on X, Kirk seemed to relish confrontation, casting himself as a champion of free speech and the open exchange of ideas, right? His rhetoric, which often involved anti-LGBTQ and anti-immigrant comments, engendered strong feelings. And there's plenty of people that loved him and wanted to come to a defense for Charlie. And he was adored by folks who shared his vision of America, in which white people were very victimized by efforts to create more diversity and equity. He was despised, feared by folks who were targets of those views. And that was from Kyle Spencer, who documented the rise of Kirk's movement in her book, Raising Them Right. So these are some of the other things that he has said. He has said of Taylor Swift that whose tour grossed over $2 billion, that you're not in charge, and urged her to reject feminism and submit to her husband. In 2024, when he was asked if he had a 10-year-old daughter who had been raped, would he have wanted her to carry the baby to term? And this was on I think a Surrounded episode of Jubilee. And he said the answer is yes, the baby would be delivered. He said that of a hypothetical 10-year-old. And these are supposed to be the people that are anti-pedestry, anti-child molestation. What is this? On his history of anti-Black, anti-immigrant remarks, Kirk dismissed affirmative action, diversity, equity, inclusion programs, and people he perceived as having benefited from them. We already covered him calling the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 a huge mistake. On a July 2023 episode of his show, he said that TV personality Joy Reid, former First Lady Michelle Obama, and the late Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, and Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson did not have the intelligence to achieve what they did without affirmative action. You had to steal a white person's slot to be taken somewhat seriously, he had said. He espoused tenets of the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, which fosters the belief that non-white immigrants will replace white citizens, and claimed that Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. Anti-LGBT sentiments. He's opposed transgender rights. His organization sponsored rallies against transgender medical care. In April 2024, he likened doctors who perform gender-affirming care to Nazis committing atrocities, in the same way that Jordan Peterson has called doctors butchers and said that they should be imprisoned. Now remember, according to the right, none of this is violent. None of this is him being hateful. He's not calling on anyone to actually engage in any sort of violence, despite the type of legislation that he would want passed, despite the fact that he'd want to erode people's rights. They're saying that none of that is violent, or that they, they're so shocked when someone ends up committing some stochastic terrorism and attacking the groups that he's targeting. We're just shocked. How could they do that? He says that one issue I think that is against our senses, so against the natural law, and dare I say, a throbbing middle finger to God, what a choice of words there, is the transgender thing happening in America right now. He said during a speech posted in 2023 by Right Wing Watch. In the same speech, he cited a Bible verse saying that a woman who puts on men's clothing or a man who wears a woman's garment is an abomination. He advocated that gay people should not be able to adopt children. And he also thinks that gay people are trying to corrupt children. In a statement on Thursday, a spokesperson for GLAAD, one of the country's leading LGBTQ advocate groups, condemned political violence as unacceptable and gun violence as an epidemic that needs urgent action. Right? I've said the same thing. Are we going to get any kind of gun control legislation out of this? I'm a pro Second Amendment person. I own firearms myself, but we've got to have some form of stricter gun control. And they'll say all the time, common sense gun regulation. Let's be more specific. How about more thorough background checks? How about making sure that across every state you cannot purchase a firearm from a civilian without registering this firearm? You could have a registry of ammunition. There's all sorts of things we could do to ensure that people that have guns can safely use them. You could have guns requiring proof of a safety training course, proof of a secure way to store the weapons. There's all sorts of regulations that we could look at regarding guns. But sadly, it seems none of this is going to happen, no matter how upset people are about what happened to Kirk. And I've seen a lot of people saying, like Stephen King, for instance, had condemned Kirk for advocating for stoning gay people to death. And then King walked that back, saying, oh, well, he never actually said that. Let's get to that in just a minute. So, touching on that topic, this is an article from the LGBTQ Nation, and it's titled, Donald Trump Shares Stage with Right-Wing Activist Who's Discussing Stoning Gay People to Death. I thought King apologized. Stephen said that he didn't actually say that. So do you think Stephen is mistaken, or is this article mistaken? Right? A right-wing activist whose rally Donald Trump spoke at last week in Arizona, because this is back in 2024 in June, is now telling his podcast audience that the Bible calls on Christians to stone gay people to death, and saying that being gay is an error, and compared homosexuality to drug addiction and alcoholism. So Charlie Kirk was discussing children's YouTuber Miss Rachel, who was targeted by right-wingers earlier this month because she acknowledged that June is Pride Month on social media last year. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you are who you are, she said in the fairly androgyne message. All right. She later posted a video responding to right-wing backlash, many on the right, including Chaya Rychik of Libs of TikTok and self-proclaimed Christian fascist Matt Walsh, who accused her of supporting child mutilation and gender ideology, which, remember, this can't be hate, right? The right wing doesn't engage in hateful rhetoric, all right? It's only the leftists that engage in hateful rhetoric, all right? She pointed out that she's Christian, and her Christianity inspires her to want to help build an accepting world for everyone. This is Miss Rachel now. And she says, in Matthew 22, a religious teacher asked Jesus, what's the most important commandment? And Jesus says, to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. There's no greater commandments than these. I believe it's mentioned 8 times, love your neighbor. Now, Kirk took issue with that at the time. And he said, I mean, Satan has quoted scripture plenty. So already make it a comparison between her for a progressive message and quoting Jesus to comparing that to Satan. And then Kirk says, you love somebody by telling them the truth, not by confirming or affirming their sin. And it says, by the way, Miss Rachel, you might want to crack open that Bible of yours. And a lesser reference part of the same scripture is in Leviticus 18, is that thou shalt lay with another man and be stoned to death. Kirk continued. Just saying, he said, smiling as his co-host laughed. So, Miss Rachel, you quote Leviticus 19, love your neighbor as yourself. The chapter before affirms God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters. And in the chapter before, Leviticus 18, and he literally said, lay with another man and be stoned to death. He's quoting Leviticus 18:22, which says, thou shalt not lie with mankind, as with womankind, it is abomination. And in Leviticus 20:13, which says, if a man also lie with a mankind, as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination, and they shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. So he absolutely did reference stoning gay people to death. And he referred to Leviticus 18 as part of God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters. So he does think that the Bible offers a perfect interpretation of penalties for whatever sexual matters he's pointing to. I don't understand why this is so difficult to look at this. And it's a very plain, clear reading. You can make easy inferences to this, especially based on his other positions and what he has said about trans people and LGBT people. I don't know why we're pretending things like, oh, no, he definitely wouldn't have said that the Bible supports stoning gay people. Not Charlie Kirk. He wouldn't have done that. Bullshit. He absolutely did do that. Now, this is just talking about Kirk's character, all right? And I'm talking just the facts, right? Facts don't care about your feelings. These are just the things that he said and that he did. And again, I'm not saying the man deserved to have been murdered in front of his family or a campus for saying this stuff. Let's just not pretend that what he was saying was not provocative and was not some form of violence against other people. Because if what he's saying here and the other things that he said about LGBT people, black people, immigrants, if none of that counts as violence or encouraging people toward violence, then it would be very weird if a bunch of right-wingers responded to what happened to Kirk. And when we were saying, well, we shouldn't advocate for violence, I'm sure right-wingers would agree with us, and they wouldn't just immediately jump to becoming bloodthirsty or saying things like we are at war or stoking violence in their followers, especially before we even knew anything about the shooter. Now, I know a lot of people have already covered this and already made videos on Kirk because it happened a few days ago, so I'm coming in later than everyone else. Part of my reasoning in waiting for this was also wanting to get more information about the shooter, wanting to make sure that we had a shooter, because there's just so much speculative information. Even right now, I'm not fully comfortable talking about the shooter and what's going on with him, simply because there's still more information coming out, and I don't want to give misinformation. The stuff that Kirk said and did, we know he said and did it. We have Snopes confirming it. We have direct quotes we can pull from his own podcasts where he said this stuff. And some of the other videos that I want to pull up and discuss in just a second are some of the people that were reacting to this. So Nancy Mace wasted no time at all to try to make this shooter a trans person or related to trans people. She wanted this to be a trans person, and at the same time of condemning other people for politicizing his murder. And let's take a look at what she said.
This shit ends. Like, enough is enough. And now I have to deal with real safety concerns. It sounds like the shooter was a tranny or pro-tranny. And just because I want to protect women, that I'm worried about getting murdered? Are you fucking...
Okay, so she's already sure that she's not even going to call them a trans person. She just uses the slur that, oh, this must be a trans person or a trans adjacent person, despite we have the FBI stats. We know that there's been if I give them the shooters that we know are trans and one person that seems like they may or may not be, that's basically 4 shooters out of thousands. And if you break it down per capita, we are even less likely to engage in violence or shooting than other groups of people, even per capita. Trans people are just not violent. We don't tend to engage in that type of behavior. That is way more of a right-wing problem, and it is way more of a cis, het, white male problem. It just is. That we have the data on it. But she's going to pretend that it's a trans person.
Are you kidding me? It's out of control, and enough is enough, and I'm going to double down.
Yeah, I agree. Enough is enough. This is out of control. Oh, wait. You don't want to admit that y'all had anything to do with that. Okay.
I'm going to be more vigilant than ever. I'm going to be louder than I've ever been until this shit stops. This shit.
Yeah. So worried, Nancy. I'm sure you're going to pass some, gun reform. You're actually going to do something about this. Here's the thing. I'm astounded at the outrage that one person getting shot has caused on the right when they have been ignoring mass shootings for years. All right. I really expected we would have some changes to gun laws or like some type of legislation after the Las Vegas shooting. Now, for those of you that like, maybe you were too young to remember this, but the Las Vegas shooting, something like, and I'm not even exaggerating, it was like 600 to 800 people were injured and more than 100 were killed by a shooter that set up in a Las Vegas hotel and shot down at people there for a festival. Alex Jones reacting to this. And let's see how Alex Jones talks about it. Now, remember, the right doesn't encourage violence or anything like that. I'll put it back at normal speed. They don't encourage violence, so I'm sure Jones is going to be perfectly rational about this and not say anything out of pocket.
Went out to all these places, having these great debates. People say, oh, he's not hardcore enough. He's there to get people to wake up, get a register to vote Republican. That was his role, and he was a champion, and Trump wouldn't have gotten reelected without him. And now he's definitely fought for his life. And when I saw the footage, he's probably
it's terrible
in hyperspace, but I'm not saying that's 100%, but he is feared dead. I'm not scared to be killed, and I do public events and things, but I can do so much more digitally or hit and run just popping up in public. I have no doubt I'd probably be dead or been shot, at least wounded, if I announced things that what Charlie did. That's why I strategically didn't do it. And not out of fear of getting shot, I just was like, I can do so much more writing and covering things in videos. Because when you're in this clown on the left saying kill everybody, and they're shooting up Catholic churches.
I'm sorry, who on the left is saying kill everybody? He just said everyone on the left is like, oh, kill everybody. I don't know any leftist that are calling to kill everybody. Right? I like how they can just throw this out there and we're supposed to just accept, like, nod along and not use any skepticism whatsoever. Where are the receipts? If I tell you, like, hey, this person seems like they're calling for violence, I would provide you an article. I would provide you a clip where you can hear them say it. I'm not going to just say, oh, well, there's people on the right that are just saying kill everybody. I'm sure there are some people that are violent on the right wing that might say something like that. Just like there are probably some people, if you go somewhere on the left, you could probably find someone somewhere on the internet saying that they want to, like, eliminate their enemies or whatever. But who are you talking about? This guy is such a giant hypocrite.
Stabbing white girls and because they're white.
Oh, so he's saying that they're stabbing white girls because they're white. And like playing into race baiting stuff. I'm sorry. I thought that the right wing didn't do race baiting. And let's say like there is somebody who's bigoted and for whatever reason they target somebody because of the color of their skin. That's not a pattern. I understand that right-wing people have a very hard time with statistics and they don't understand data or how any of this works. One single occurrence of something is not a trend. One person getting stabbed, and then you say, well, why did you stab them? Like, what if I get stabbed today and somebody gets on YouTube and says, we've got a major problem. Okay. There are people going around stabbing people wearing yellow shirts. And if you're wearing a yellow shirt, they might stab you. You would look at them and be like, that sounds really stupid. Like, I don't understand why I should take that serious at all. Is there a trend of this? Are there like a lot of people being stabbed? Then when people ask the motivation if they were wearing yellow shirts, no, that's not happening. Why are you trying to stir up all this fear?
The rest of it, this is dangerous. This is a war. This is a war. This is a war. This is the war.
Oh, okay, so now he's just chanting, this is a war. Remember, the right doesn't push violent rhetoric. They're saying that only the left are violent people. But he's literally painting this as a war.
The woman that spits on Ed Martin and says, I hope you die or whatever. That's just people are. And they wound up a bunch of crazies. So that's what Podesta called for in August 2000. If Trump was won, they were going to.
Yeah. Alex Jones, known beacon of being anti-gun, anti-mass shooter. I'm sure he's never advocated. Uh, oh wait, that's right, he did, didn't he? Remember the Sandy Hook shooting? And this piece of garbage has spent like a decade insulting these parents, calling them crisis actors, denying that these children were ever killed, harass these families so much they've had to move multiple times. Armed people have showed up at their houses trying to get them to confess. The same guy that spread the Pizzagate conspiracy so that another armed right-wing person went to a pizzeria to free children from the basement when there wasn't even a basement to that building. Yeah, same guy. Right-wingers have been showing up forever to like Drag Queen Story Hour armed with assault rifles and body armor, trying to intimidate LGBT people or their families that wanted to show up and let their kids attend an event where somebody in drag was reading a book to them in the middle of a public library. But we're the violent ones, not them. All right, January 6th. Oh, that was, that was just patriots touring the Capitol building, and security just let them in. They didn't do anything wrong, okay? Like a violent insurrection, and they're like, oh no, that's not violence either. We're not the ones that do violence. Like, I'm sorry, when did when did the radical cultural, like neo-Marxist, as Peterson calls them, when did they storm the Capitol building? When did they try to overturn the election? Oh wait, that didn't happen. Now did it? So Jones is sitting here saying that we're at war because of this. Like, okay, there's been plenty of other figureheads on the right that have been saying the exact same type of thing. But what worries me is that there are other, like, I don't know, maybe these people are influencers. I don't know who these people are. They seem like pretty much nobodies, but they came across my feed on TikTok. And what do we have here? This is another right-winger. So I'm not going to pull from Alex Jones. I'm not going to point to any of the people that are higher up. I'm not going to point to the Prosobiacs, the people that are like known white nationalists. Okay. These are more of like the everyday kind of right-winger. Let's see where they're at in this.
At Utah University, somewhere in fucking Utah at one of his events. And I am directly attributing this to all these fucking media personalities and these politicians like Tim Walz getting on the fucking TV and saying, well, I sure do hope he dies today. I sure.
Right. When did Tim Walz ever say that? Tim Walz is like a completely like chill Midwestern dad. Like I can't even imagine Tim Walz doing this. And you're going to have to like, stitch it somewhere, buddy. Do you have a clip you could reference? Do you have an article you could pull up instead of just making stuff up in your truck? Can you say, like, show us, where did Tim Walz say this?
I hope he dies. Y'all are the fucking reason this shit is happening, you evil motherfuckers. Everything that they say Trump is, they are. Trump's violent, they're fucking violent.
No. Trump literally led an insurrection on the Capitol building. That's why we would say that Trump is violent. Trump has encouraged people to punch people at his rally that he didn't like. He has said that he could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and not lose a single vote. And that's not even getting to the Epstein stuff there, buddy, where we know that Trump was involved with Epstein trafficking kids, okay, allegedly. But I'm going to say, like, that would count as violence against other people as well, right? I've never done anything like that. I'm not in the Epstein files, never been to a stupid island. I've never stormed the Capitol. Like, there's so much projection coming from this person right now. It is unreal.
Trump's hateful. They're fucking hateful. Trump's a fascist. They're literally shooting people who don't agree with them.
It's ironic that, as far as we can tell right now, the shooter was raised in a conservative Mormon family in Utah. And there seems to be some evidence to suggest that the alleged shooter, Tyler, seems like he may have been a groyper, like from among Nick Fuentes' community. That would be a very far right person, which once again, allegedly, all right, and so this person is just making stuff up, and you can tell has been fed this right wing propaganda, and is not citing anything. Like, he's just enraged. Here's another TikToker, right? And this is the type of stuff that you see coming down from higher up in the Republican Party, of them talking about, the Alex Joneses and these types talking about war, war, war. Let's see how it goes. Like, how these people are affected.
When this is all over, you remember who fired first. You've tried to kill the president twice, and now you've assassinated man for talking.
Both people that tried to assassinate the president, one of them was a right-winger, the person in Butler, Pennsylvania, and the other person, if you've been following the court case with him, I don't know if this guy's even in his right mind. He's defending himself, and he's saying things that are nonsensical in his trial. So I don't know if I would say the politics of that person even matters. And both of them seem to be pretty conservative. But the first guy absolutely was also MAGA and a conservative.
You don't really want to do this, okay?
Do what?
400 million plus firearms in this country, and they don't belong to the left, bro.
Okay, so what's the inference?
Yeah. If you think it's okay to murder someone because of their opinion,
nobody has said it's okay to murder people because of their opinion. I don't know how many times you have to say that is not okay. We don't support that type of violence. Where is this coming from? It's like, well, if y'all are going to say that this is okay, who is saying that?
you get what's coming to you. You and yours.
Okay, so you're going to get what's coming to you. You and yours. So if I'm interpreting this like there's an implied threat here that, like, oh, you're going to get what's coming to you and your family is going to get what's coming to them. This is the type of person that I feel like the FBI should look into to say what's going on with them. Like, how many does he own firearms? How is he doing? Right? What does his social media profile look like? What communities is he festering in? And it's been ridiculous. Like, from the moment that the reactions started coming in. We got Jesse Waters here. So Jesse Waters is a Fox News host. He is on one of those popular news channels on television. He says that MAGA will avenge Charlie Kirk's death. So he says Trump gets hit in the ear and Charlie gets shot dead, Waters said. He goes on to add, think about it. It's happening. You've got trans shooters, like 2, 3. You've got riots in LA. What riots? They are at war with us. There's the word war again. Whether we want to accept it or they are at war with us. And what are we going to do about it? How much political violence are we going to tolerate? And that's the question we're going to have to ask ourselves. He called out those on the left saying everybody's accountable. So I guess everyone ostensibly that he thinks is on his left. We are sick. We are sad. We are angry. And we are resolute, he said. And we are going to avenge Charlie's death in the way that Charlie wanted to be avenged. I don't even understand. How do you know what Charlie wanted after he died? You're saying that you are going to avenge it in the way that Charlie wanted to be avenged. Okay, so now we have media personalities, right? So we've got Alex Jones saying that we're at war. Now we've got news figures and Jesse Waters saying we're at war. There are endless of these TikTok videos and people that are on Twitter that are right-wingers that are all calling for more violence. And at the end of the day, that should be unacceptable, right? Melissa Hortman and her husband were both murdered a few months ago. They were assassinated in their home by a right-wing MAGA extremist. And at the time, there was crickets from conservatives, crickets from the right on that assassination. And what I think Kirk's death shows is like a foghorn for the violent political climate that we have right now. Now, America in general is a violent country, right? Like, we're supporting Israel and their genocide. We shouldn't be. That's disgusting. We essentially turn a blind eye toward like the fact that children get shot and killed in schools. Like, the number one cause of death of children in this country is gun deaths. That is absurd and ridiculous. We also have media that is permeated with this violence. You can get on Twitter, you can get on social media at any time of the day, and you can see people being killed in foreign wars where there are battle zones that are being live streamed all the time. In general, we have just developed a violent culture, a culture that glorifies the idea of like revenge movies, of being like a one-man army taking out all your enemies or whatever. And while those types of stories have always been popular, like the Count of Monte Cristo and that type of stuff, I would say that our current political climate, the temperature has been rising and rising and rising, especially because you've had the rise of Trump and his era of politics, where you have a politician at the highest level of office that was calling for violence, calling for people to assault those in the crowd that he did not like, saying that he would pay their bills. He was joking about Pelosi's husband being hit with a hammer. He has called for executing drug dealers. He has said he wants to bomb Mexico. We have been bombing Venezuelan ships. He's tried to make it clear he wants to annex Greenland. Maybe use our military in Panama. Our country has become more and more and more violent. And that volatility is now spilling over into our politics, to the point where political commentators are now being shot. And I think that a lot of minority communities have been very well aware of the danger kind of brewing within our culture for a while, right? Trans people especially have been made aware that we are often targeted for murder. We are murdered at a higher rate than other demographic groups, especially trans women of color. Our deaths have been made into political cartoons. People have memed us. Like, there's a trans girl that unalived herself leaping off of a bridge, a teenager, which is a very sad story. And her Stone Toss Comics literally turned her death into a memeing comic of her leaping off of a bridge. We've been more than aware of the danger posed to us by society. If we get singled out in public as being trans, if we're dating somebody and we don't tell them that we're trans, sometimes you've had trans people that get killed by their family will randomly target them. So we have definitely been well aware of this. If you look back, Kirk had talked about the Civil Rights Act being a mistake in like 64, 65. Let's not forget what was going on at that time as well, right? There was in trying to fight back against segregation, and then all the violence that was done to the Black community then, and has continued to have been done to their communities up until today by some of the very rhetoric and that Charlie Kirk spread, and the people around him like Posobiec support. They support this idea of great replacement. They support this idea that Black people pose a danger specifically to white women. This is just run-of-the-mill rhetoric from them these days. And it used to be that type of rhetoric, when I was growing up in the 90s, you would mostly hear that and you would say, oh, no, that person's definitely a neo-Nazi, or in the South, you'd be like, that person actually might be a member of the Klan or something because of how much they, hate brown people. And these days, a lot of those are kind of the standard Republican Party talking points. And that should worry a lot of people simply because it shows how far the rhetoric has gone, and we are seeing more and more political violence as a result of that. There was a MSNBC host that was fired for basically saying that Charlie Kirk got what was coming to him. Now, I don't think that he should have said that, but you have Waters here saying that he's going to be avenged. But this type of kind of moral rot on the conservative side, you end up seeing stuff like this. So on Fox, Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends said that the government should just kill homeless people with involuntary lethal injection. So MSNBC fires a host for saying that, like, oh, well, Charlie got what was coming to him, which he shouldn't have said that, but they fired him. Brian Kilmeade says that we should just mass murder homeless people, involuntary lethal injection. He apologizes and he's able to keep his job. But they want to say that the left is where violent rhetoric comes from. It's just ridiculous. And as long as conservatives will say, well, it's fine for Brian Kilmeade to keep his job on Fox News, the largest, most popular right-wing media platform, it's fine for him to say something like that they should just kill all the homeless people. That's fine. Then I don't think that we ought be surprised when we see violence coming from conservatives. I'm going to close this video out by saying that I think it's sad that this is what politics has come to in America. All I see right now is a future that will be even more violent for us. It shouldn't have to be that way, but it seems like this is just where we're at right now because of the political choices that the American public has made. And the fact that we allow people like Brian Kilmeade to stay on air after he says we should mass kill homeless people, but yet, we clutch pearls and you got to fire the guy that says, well, Charlie Kirk had this coming. Now, if you say like, okay, well, what are we going to tolerate? If we're going to say, no, you cannot say that this individual person deserved what they got, okay? That you can't be on our platform anymore. Then I would expect on the conservative side that when someone says something like this, when they say we should mass murder the homeless, that should be unacceptable too. You should say that type of rhetoric talking about killing random people is not acceptable. Otherwise, we're just going to end up in a situation where, like, every time you take a vacation somewhere, you send your children off to school, you want to go to a convention, you want to go out for a burger and fries, you want to go to a baseball game, you want to go to a concert in Las Vegas, you're always going to have to wonder, are we going to be on the news tonight? Are we going to be where the next mass shooting happens? Because we've allowed this stuff to fester in our culture. If you are going to say it's unacceptable to talk about Charlie Kirk in this type of way, then it should be unacceptable to talk about anyone this way. Trans people, black people, anyone. This type of rhetoric should be off limits because of the type of behavior that then follows that rhetoric. These words don't just stay words. And it's one of the most frustrating things that I have whenever it comes to people talking about, well, debate just changes minds and debate should never result in violence. I can agree to that, but that is a simplistic way to view words. There are certain things that should be off limits in debate. You shouldn't be debating whether people should have like civil liberties at all. You shouldn't be debating whether it's okay to use a woman as an incubator. You shouldn't be debating about whether it's okay to have segregation. There are certain types of topics that when you open them up for debate, you are inviting violence. You are encouraging violence. You're going to make people so desperate and afraid and angry that they feel that their only recourse, especially if you manage to convince some large portion of the population to go along with very harmful policies against them, you might make them feel like they have no other choice but to engage in violence. And that's a culture and a society that I don't want to live in, okay? I think empathy is a good thing to have for other people. I disagree with Charlie Kirk that empathy is a made-up New Age weakness in the West. Though weakness is nihilism. The weakness is this nationalism, this white supremacy, the hatred of other people for petty differences. So that instead of focusing on things like, why does our economy suck? Why is it so hard to afford rent? Why can't we buy houses? All right. Instead of focusing on who's actually causing the problems for our society, we get bogged down in endless nonsensical conversations about like what my gender is, or what my sexuality is, or what church am I going to. None of that stuff should matter. Those are private identity components of myself that don't affect you. And instead of focusing on the billionaires and the corporations that are bleeding us dry and forcing us into awful labor conditions, stealing every single bit of money they can squeeze out of you, and while your family is struggling to put food on the table, and your kids, you can't afford to send them to college, you can't afford car repairs, you're going to say that the actual problem is the left, despite the left not having almost any political capital at all right now. Like the Republicans, the conservatives control the House, the Senate, the White House, and they have a Supreme Court that agrees with them. So if their policies are so good and they are actually good for you and your family, why aren't things getting better? Why do we have an insane tariff economic policy? And why can't they do anything about mass shooting? How come Nancy Mace says stuff like, I'm going to be extra vigilant? Oh, good. So the next time we have mass shootings, don't worry, Nancy Mace will be there to, to thump her finger at them and tell them, we don't accept that kind of violence in this country. Okay, what is she actually going to do? What policies are going to pass that would actually fix this? And you can't just say, oh, we're going to just blanket target people we politically disagree with if you also have the position that you don't support violent rhetoric against people that you disagree with. I'm sorry, like, I thought y'all all wanted debate or whatever. And to the right wing, you're saying, oh, debate is over right now. What's your policy? If you're not going to debate it, what's the policy that you think is actually going to fix some of these problems? Instead of just saying, oh, gee, it seems like we have a mass shooter problem, maybe we could actually have some policies that could fix that. Maybe if we all exercise a little bit of empathy and looked at each other as human beings and recognized that we should work together for our own interests instead of stabbing each other in the back, maybe we could actually get somewhere. Maybe we could actually fix something. But if we keep letting them spin a narrative like this, if we keep saying it's fine to say things like you should just mass kill the homeless, if we just turn a blind eye every single time there's actually a tragedy, and you're just going to like let them lie to you about who the actual shooters are, you're never going to be able to identify what the actual problem is. And if you can't identify what the problem is, how are you going to fix it? Those are my thoughts on Charlie Kirk, as well as just kind of the general political climate within the United States right now, and the identity politics that the right wing likes to play with all the time. I'm going to make another video talking about identity politics in general pretty soon, but these are my thoughts on Charlie Kirk, that situation. It's tragic. He shouldn't have had to die for this, but this unfortunately is the country and the reality that we live in. I will see y'all in the next video. Bye.